Are you a fox? Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I want to talk about the recent interview that Megan Fox did on the Call Her Daddy podcast. I watched it and I had a lot of thoughts on this, and it got me thinking about a whole lot of topics having to do with body image, body dysmorphia, the concept of pretty privilege, and a lot of things like that. It was a fascinating interview. I highly suggest you watch this interview. I found it really interesting in a lot of different aspects. Before I get into this, I want to do some disclaimers. I know everybody complains about all my disclaimers at the beginning, but like I kind of have to. That's just the world that we're in right now. First of all, I want to say when I talk about celebrities, I am solely talking about them in terms of their public persona, the image that they are putting out to the world. I don't know these people personally. I'm guessing most of you probably don't know these people personally. So I'm operating on the public knowledge that we have of these celebrities, and that's probably what other people are operating on too. So when people get like, do you know these people? How dare you talk about these people? I'm simply analyzing their public personas, which is the same information that we all have. So I don't know Megan Fox. I am simply analyzing her primarily based on the interview, but I think kind of based on how I have observed her career over the years. I'm simply making this as an analysis. I am absolutely not making this as a hit piece on Megan Fox. I'm not making this because I want to bash her or drag her or anything like that. I actually like Megan Fox, and I'm gonna get into that in the video, but like this is not a hit piece or some kind of way of like just like attacking Megan Fox. I also want to state that like I honestly don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I had never listened to the Call Her Daddy podcast before. I knew about it, and I knew like kind of knew who Alex was. She's the host of the Call Her Daddy podcast if you're not familiar. I have heard that she's very controversial, but I don't really know anything about that. I don't know much about the backstory of the podcast, and I don't really know much about Alex herself. Again, this was the first time I was listening to one of her interviews. So like I don't really know. I know there was controversy around her and her podcast. I don't really know much about that. I wasn't really paying attention to it that much. So like none of this is a commentary on the Call Her Daddy podcast or on Alex herself as a host. So Megan Fox. I actually have been following Megan Fox's career. I actually haven't seen her in much as far as movies go now that I think about it. I'm like trying to think if I ever seen Megan Fox in a movie. I don't know if I ever have. But I have been like following her presence in the entertainment world, I think since she first became famous. It's kind of hard to not. I mean, she's, you know, iconic. Her name is really associated with sex symbol. She's a modern day sex symbol. But it's interesting how every time I've seen her interviewed over the years, I've always felt for her. I've always gotten this sense in every interview I've ever seen her that she really wasn't very confident in herself, that she did have a lot of insecurities, and that she wasn't really comfortable with her place in the entertainment world. I've always felt for her. Like I've always kind of felt like I could kind of relate to the things that she seemed like she was feeling even when she wasn't saying them. I'm not that person. I know there was all that controversy on that, was it the Love is Blind show? I don't watch those kind of dating shows, but about the, you know, the girl that said she looked like Megan Fox, and everybody was like, she doesn't, and there was a whole drama around that. I'm not at all saying that like I think I look like Megan Fox or that I'm like Megan Fox hot or anything. Like I'm not even talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about a like feeling like I could relate to some of the things that she was feeling. I've obviously never been like an international sex symbol by any means, and I obviously don't look like Megan Fox, and I acknowledge that. But from my own personal experience, my background before I kind of was into social media and YouTube, I was a stand-up comedian for like 15 years. It's a male-dominated industry. I started when I was very young, and I was considered very attractive in the comedy world. I was very over-sexualized. I was not taken seriously in many instances because people thought I was too attractive to be funny, which is something that Megan actually touches on in the Call Her Daddy podcast, of like people don't appreciate her intelligence or her humor because of her physical appearance, and that is for sure something that I've experienced. Now my experience has been a little bit unique in the sense that this is actually something that Alex the host talked about. She had seen someone online that had lost like 100 pounds, and this person was talking about how strange their life was, like having been heavier and having been smaller. And this isn't really about Megan, but I thought this was an interesting discussion. Basically the idea that this woman who, when she was 100 pounds heavier, men ignored her, but like women were nice to her, and then she lost 100 pounds and then women were not nice to her anymore and men were super nice to her. And having compared those two experiences, I can say as somebody who has been, like right now I'm in a bigger body and I've been in a much smaller body, in a more like societally acceptable body size, I can say that the world is different when you're smaller and when you're bigger. I wouldn't say my own experience was necessarily so much that dramatic. Like I think my interactions with women have been more complex than just in relation to my body size. I think I've had women who liked me more or less at different body sizes. I've had women who it didn't really matter what my body size was. Like I don't think that my interactions with women and the sisterhood wounding or sisterhood situation, like I don't really think that that has been as directly affected by my weight. Not to say that it wasn't affected at all, but I do feel like it's oftentimes too, even in a smaller body size. I think in some groups of women I was more accepted because I was seen as more like them. Like I was seen like I could be a part of their clique because I was a more acceptable body size. And in some cases I did have women when I was smaller who treated me worse because they saw me as more competition. So like I've had it go both ways. So I don't want to say that my interactions with women per se have always been completely directly related to my body size and my weight, but with men, absolutely. But not even necessarily that they've always treated me better when I was in a bigger body size or in a smaller body size. In some cases, I've actually been treated worse in a smaller body size. My situation I think was somewhat unique, and I know this is a tangent. This video is gonna be about Megan Fox, but I kind of wanted to go on this tangent. But you know, since Megan was talking about people having a hard time separating her looks from her personality and stuff, I think this is a valid discussion. From my perspective, having been somebody who I grew up overweight, I was like the fat kid in school. That was my experience. So I learned to be funny because that was what I felt like I could offer the world. You know what I mean? I could be the fat funny friend, and I very often was. Like I wasn't the girl that guys would necessarily want to date, although it's not like I never got asked out, but it was usually getting asked out by guys who knew I was insecure because I was overweight so they could manipulate me. I would get dates, but like I wouldn't get quality dates necessarily. I would usually get guys who felt like they could take advantage of me. When I would talk to men that were maybe, I don't even know if I would say quality, but like guys who had a little bit more going for them, I could usually like have a cool conversation with them and stuff, and like we could have chemistry and I could make them laugh and it would be funny, but like they would always go for like the thin vacant girl, right? Like they wouldn't want the fat funny friend, right? That was kind of my experience generally when I was younger. Then I lost a significant amount of weight in college, and then I started doing stand-up comedy, and one of the reasons I started doing stand-up comedy after I lost the weight, I think, was because I gained more confidence in myself. I still felt like the little fat girl on the inside, so I still had a ton of body insecurities, which I'm going to get into that concept of body dysmorphia and how it affects how your body looks a little bit later, because it's a big topic that Megan has talked about. But like I still had a lot of body image issues. But the fact that I had accomplished losing weight, which by the way, in that same time that I lost weight, probably lost, I would say about between 60 and 70 pounds. I also graduated from college in that time period. I graduated, I got my 4-year degree in 2.5 years, and I graduated with honors. And all anybody ever wanted to congratulate me for was the fact that I lost weight, which goes to show where we put priorities for women. Now, granted, my physical appearance was something that people noticed, and they didn't necessarily automatically know that I had achieved this academic achievement. But it also does send a message to women that it's your physical achievements that are rewarded, whereas anything academically is not really seen as being as rewarded. So anyway, having gone through college and having achieved that, and having actually achieved losing the weight, which, you know, I don't think that losing weight and getting skinny should be a goal that a woman should be carrying so much weight on, I guess, pun intended. Like, I don't think that weight loss and reaching a certain goal is always the healthiest mindset to be in. I think women spend too much time focused on that kind of stuff. But that said, there is a sense of accomplishment when you say, I want to achieve this, and then you actually do it. So I had more confidence in my ability, which is why I started doing stand-up comedy. But the weird thing was, because most people in stand-up only knew me as being thinner or in a smaller body size, they didn't know me in a bigger body size. They automatically thought that I wasn't funny because they didn't look at me like the fat funny friend. They looked at me as like, I mean, I literally would get guys that would come up to me and be like, just be a model and stop trying to do stand-up. And like, I mean, it was kind of flattering that someone thought I could be a model, but like, it was also like, well, I didn't get less funny because I lost weight. But having gone from the fact that I was in a bigger body size and like everybody just thought that I was funny and that's all I had to offer, I was the funny girl. And then I lost weight and then everybody was just sort of like, you're too pretty to be funny. That was a weird transition for me. It was a strange thing. And then the fact that when I was overweight, nobody really questioned my intelligence at all. People just kind of assumed that I was probably smart. And then I lost the weight. All of a sudden, everyone thought I was just some kind of like airhead blonde. I say this to say that I understand what it's like to be someone in a smaller body size and have them discredit your intelligence, your humor, or anything about your personality because they see you as an attractive person. Because I've been in the bigger body size when people were like, oh, she's smart, oh, she's funny, of course, we get it, it's fine. And then you get into a smaller body size and all of a sudden people think that those things just, like you lost those things along with losing the weight. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you don't have a personality. All of a sudden you can't be intelligent. All of a sudden you can't be a funny person or something. And like, I've been on both sides. And I think that's one of the reasons why I have a lot of empathy when I hear women like Megan Fox talk about people discrediting her because they are physically attracted to her. They don't look at her intelligence, they don't look at her personality, her humor, because she is attractive. Something that I've learned over the years, and this took me a very long time to understand, like a very long time. And I'm not gonna get into the whole drama about like, can women be funny? That argument, it comes around every few years. I'm not gonna get into that. Many men, especially ones who are led by their egos, cannot handle a woman who can be funny and attractive, or intelligent and attractive. I think those two are similar. It's too intimidating for them. They can't, and I know men are like, we're not intimidated by women. You are. I'm not saying that the reason why men do everything is simply because they're intimidated. Like I think a lot of women jump to, he's just intimidated, that's why he didn't call me. Like it's not always because you're intimidating him. He might just not be interested. But men are intimidated by women. Like it does happen, okay? Like it's not like we're never intimidated, we're just not interested. No, sometimes you're intimidated. Most men cannot handle a woman that they are sexually attracted to and a woman who is intelligent or funny or has a great personality or something. They can't handle both. I don't want to dive down this rabbit hole because I'm gonna do a video talking about porn culture and how much porn culture has screwed up our society. But I do think a lot of it has to do with porn culture because I think a lot of men today are really conditioned to have to see women that they are sexually attracted to as objects. And if all of a sudden this woman is also intelligent, or this woman also is funny, or this woman also has a great personality, they have a hard time objectifying her. And unfortunately, because of porn culture, many men have trouble getting sexually turned on if they have to treat a woman like she's not an object. And I'm gonna do a video diving into that kind of stuff because I think that's probably one of the biggest problems we have in society, especially when it comes to male-female interactions. But I just want to touch on that topic because I think that affects a lot of women. And I think it is also, like, I think a lot of women have a hard time understanding it if they haven't necessarily been in that situation where maybe they've been sexually objectified, although I think most women have probably experienced that in life. No matter how attractive you are, I think most women have experienced being objectified. But if a woman is being sexually objectified, men have to cut off the personality, the humor, the intelligence. Like they have to cut that off in order to objectify someone, because if you actually acknowledge that a person has more to them than just their physical body, they can't really objectify them anymore because they have to acknowledge their humanity. It's a sick concept, but I can just say again, while I have never been an international sex symbol like Megan Fox, I have been in situations where my intelligence or my humor has been discredited because of my physical appearance. So I do understand that. I think it's one of the reasons why I've always really felt for Megan when she has, like, over the years been interviewed, and I've always felt like she wasn't comfortable with the sex symbol role. She was kind of like put in that role. It was never something she was fully comfortable in. I've also always felt, even from the beginning when I'd see early interviews with her, I remember distinctly a red carpet interview with her, and you know, she was on the red carpet, she was looking stunning, of course. Whoever was interviewing her like told her she looked great, and she was like, I look like Alan Alda. Like, when I get dressed up like this, I feel like I look like Alan Alda. If any of you don't know who Alan Alda is, Google him. He was an actor back in the day. Not an unattractive actor, but like not a man who women are trying to emulate, right? And that really stuck with me. I actually used to do a comedy bit too over the years that was kind of inspired by that, where I would talk about how like I would wake up, sometimes I'd look in the mirror and I would see John Goodman. No offense to John Goodman, but like that's not the look I'm going for, right? So I would always say like I have a case of the John Goodmans, like Megan Fox is a case of the Alan Aldas. Like sometimes as a woman you look in the mirror and you think like you look like some kind of like a not that attractive guy, you know what I mean? You don't necessarily see yourself completely, and that's where I want to get into body dysmorphia. Megan has been very vocal about having body dysmorphia over the years. Now it's interesting because she did an interview talking about her body dysmorphia, I don't know if it was last year, it was not too long ago. And I was starting to see a lot of people that were actually trying to say she didn't actually have body dysmorphia. A lot of people were saying that they thought that she was just saying she had body dysmorphia just to get attention. There is a phenomenon where people will kind of like insult themselves as a way to kind of get people to compliment them, and just like, oh, I'm so dumb, and you're like, oh, you're not dumb, and you're like, oh, thank you for saying I'm not dumb, like that kind of thing. I understand that's a thing. Like I understand people do that. Personally, I think that Megan's been too consistent. My observation, totally my opinion, but I think Megan has been too consistent throughout her entire career of seeming very uncomfortable in her body, that I truly believe she actually has body dysmorphia. Like I don't believe she's just making that up. I think one of the other criticisms that people were having about like whether or not she actually has body dysmorphia is that they're like, well, she wouldn't be showing off her body so much, which is actually I think a misunderstanding about what body dysmorphia is. So if any of you actually aren't familiar with body dysmorphia, a very simplified explanation is it's really when you look at yourself and you can't actually see yourself clearly. You tend to see yourself as being less attractive, or even to some extent deformed, or you have a very warped view of what your body actually looks like. But one of the misconceptions of body dysmorphia is that it always manifests in, I'm gonna say a woman, because I mean body dysmorphia can affect men or women, but it is much more common in women. So I'm gonna kind of address this to women. But body dysmorphia can show up in women as a woman feeling like she needs to cover herself up and wear more clothing to hide her body. That can happen. It can also happen in women who feel like they need to essentially expose their body all the time. I know that seems counterintuitive, but that can happen. I think especially if you are a woman who is being told that you're sexy, even though you don't see yourself as sexy, you may have the feeling of like, well, they're telling me I'm sexy, so maybe if I just give them the sexy that they're asking for, they'll leave me alone, or like they won't notice my flaw. Like if you have like something that you think is a perceived flaw in you, which in body dysmorphia, it may not be your whole body that you feel like is dysmorphed. It may be a certain part of your body or a certain aspect of your body that you may see as being bad or wrong or deformed or something. There can also be the idea that if you start exposing another area of your body, people won't look at the area of your body that you think is flawed. There's a lot of different ways that body dysmorphia can show up. So the argument that a lot of people have had that like, oh, I don't think Megan actually has body dysmorphia because she wouldn't be so like naked all the time, or she wouldn't be so exposed, that's not necessarily true. Body dysmorphia can manifest outwardly in different ways in different people depending on their situation. So I really don't believe the fact that Megan dresses or does photo shoots or things like that, you know, exposing more skin or wearing skimpier outfits or something, that's not necessarily a sign that she doesn't have body dysmorphia. That oftentimes can feel like it's either an overcompensation or maybe a distraction from something. I really do feel like Megan, even in this interview, and even though I think she's done a lot of work on herself, she seems very disconnected from her body. Like she seems very, and I think she mentioned that in the interview too, about how she never felt like her body was her own, like her body wasn't what the body she was meant to be in, which shows a disconnection, a disassociation with her body, which can be, it's common. It can happen for a lot of different reasons. The fact that she has been so consistent with talking about body dysmorphia, the fact that she's always seemed, at least to me, like she was very disassociated with her body. It also, I think too, could be the reason why she kind of allowed the industry to make her into a sex symbol, even though that wasn't really what she felt like or wasn't comfortable with. She then disassociated herself, like the sex symbol stuff with her body was one thing and she was another thing, and that can cause a big split, like a big dissociation. Most of us are never going to experience it on that grand a scale, but I definitely think that many women can relate. And I thought one of the things that Megan talked about that I think, honestly, I think a lot of women can relate to this, like on a smaller scale in our own personal lives, is the idea that Megan talked about the fact that, you know, essentially like the people, the industry, the world, like made her into this sex symbol. They made her into this image, this character that they wanted her to be, and then they murdered her. And I think most women can relate to that to a certain extent, that as women, we tend to, from a very young age, get pressured into being sexy or being sexually available, or we get objectified, or we get kind of like, we get this sexuality like pushed on us. And then when we actually decide to express that sexuality, to be like, okay, you think I'm sexy, you think I'm a sexy person, you think I'm a sexual being, well, let me embrace that, let me own that, let me own being sexy. And then you get vilified, you get called a slut, a whore, you know, all this kind of things, because it's like, well, how dare you treat yourself like a sex symbol? I could get on a whole other tangent. I have a video talking about women's sexuality and things like that. That's something I'm very passionate about, so I probably will do more videos on that. You can look at some of the videos I already have talking about that topic, and I'll probably be making more, but most women in the world can probably relate to that experience. Not necessarily on the global scale that Megan is experiencing it, but I think most women can connect to that in their own lives. One of the things that Megan talked about in her interview was the fact that when she was in middle school, she said she had an eating disorder. She was hospitalized twice for an eating disorder. She also plucked out all of her eyebrows, which apparently didn't grow back, is what she said. But, you know, when Alex asked her why she did that, I mean, essentially she admitted that it was because she was trying to mutilate herself. You know, it's the same thing as cutting, right? Like, you're trying to hurt yourself. You're trying to basically destroy yourself. One thing that Megan said, I know this is gonna be kind of controversial, but one thing that Megan has said in part of the interview is that she struggles with keeping weight on. That's not to say that people who struggle to keep weight on can't have eating disorders. Like, eating disorders are not necessarily just about your body size. I always see it as a bit of a warning sign when somebody obviously has severe body dysmorphia and has a history of eating disorders. When they say they struggle to keep weight on, I oftentimes wonder if that's true or if they're just too afraid to actually eat. Again, I do understand that there are women who struggle to gain weight or to keep weight on, and I understand that is something that happens. I'm not trying to deny that. But I've known people in the past, and I do think there are women in the world who say they struggle to keep weight on, when in reality, it's their way of convincing themselves that they don't have an eating disorder because they're actually afraid to eat, because they're so terrified of putting on any weight. I'm not dismissing genetics or that there aren't experiences or maybe even health issues where women are actually struggling to keep weight on. I understand that. I would invite you, if you are a woman who is struggling to keep weight on, to ask yourself if you are actually comfortable with carrying extra weight on your body, or if you have been programmed by society to believe that gaining weight is always wrong. I'm not talking about glorifying obesity. I'm talking about like being a normal healthy weight, which the media does not really teach you to be a normal healthy weight. The media glorifies women being very underweight or having a body fat level that is probably dangerously low. And I think there are women who may struggle with putting on weight because they are actually in fear of it. You may be thinking that you want to put on weight or gain weight, but you might also have a fear of it, so you're actually blocking it. I mean, that's also true in reverse. There are women out there, I've experienced this myself, who say they want to lose weight, who want to lose weight, but they don't actually feel safe to lose weight. They feel like their weight is a barrier for them. It's like a protective shield. So as much as they're like doing all the right things and they're following all the right, you know, diet plans and exercise and whatever, they're not losing weight because they have a fear of it. And all I'm saying in this situation is I think it's fair to ask yourself, if you aren't the weight that you would like to be, either higher or lower, to actually ask yourself, do you actually feel safe to be the weight that you feel like you would like to be, or the body shape or the body size or the body fat level or anything? Like, does that feel safe for you? Because if you are actually feeling like doing those things, like either being that weight or that size or that shape, or even doing the things to get there is like unsafe, your body is going to reject it, because your body wants you to be safe. Like, your body wants you to be safe. Our bodies are amazing, amazing, amazing beings that want us to be safe. So they're gonna fight us if we have a notion or an idea or a perception that something is unsafe. Our body's gonna fight us on that because our body wants to keep us safe. Our bodies want us to be healthy, right? I know oftentimes we hate on our bodies so much, but our bodies want the best for us. Sometimes we kind of got to give our body a little bit of grace for actually trying to keep us safe, even if what we're doing is not actually the thing that's keeping us safe. I just think those things are important to ask ourselves. I'm not saying that somebody who struggles to keep body weight on can't have an eating disorder. And there is actually there's a meme that I've seen going around online a lot that is essentially like, you know, women who are naturally thin, if they get an eating disorder, they get hospitalized and they get treatment. Whereas if a woman is overweight and she gets an eating disorder, she's seen as a weight loss success story. I can relate very much to the second part of that. The fact that Megan was hospitalized, she probably got the help and treatment because she probably was on the thinner side and then getting the eating disorder, which is not always related to what your body looks like. Eating disorders can come from other sources. Oftentimes it's needing to feel a sense of control when you feel out of control in the world. It can also be a form of self-harm. There's a lot of reasons why people can get eating disorders. The fact that Megan was probably naturally thin, having an eating disorder is probably why she ended up hospitalized. Whereas if a woman had been, there was actually a woman I saw on TikTok talking about how she, as a teenager, actually got full-on bulimia and everybody just celebrated her for it. And it actually wasn't until her dentist, like her regular doctor, like celebrated her for it. Like they didn't know obviously that she was bulimic, but they never thought to question why she all of a sudden was losing weight. They just kept rewarding her and they just kept saying how great it was that she was losing weight. And it actually wasn't until her dentist actually called her out and said that the stomach acid from her throwing up was actually deteriorating her teeth and was like, if you keep doing this, you're gonna lose all your teeth. And it took her dentist calling her out on this when like everybody else in her life, her family, her regular doctor was like celebrating her for having lost weight, even though nobody bothered to actually pay attention to how she was losing weight. These things are valid things to talk about. The fact that Megan pulled all her eyebrows out, and she admits that she did it as a form of self-harm. So we know that Megan has a history of self-harm, of harming herself. So now I want to get into the very sensitive subject of plastic surgery, which is really what I wanted to talk about in this video. I did a video not too long ago talking about the body image trends, fake versus natural, and I used Kylie Jenner as an example. I had a lot of people that agreed with my perspective about Kylie Jenner. I had some pushback too. And since Megan did mention Kylie Jenner in her interview, I wanted to talk about this because I just want to say overall, and I highly recommend that you watch Megan Fox's interview. There were so many things that she said that I was just like, yes, like I'm on board. Her talking about plastic surgery, it got under my skin. It bugged me the way that they presented this and the way she talked about it. I will admit I got kind of irritated. And I actually had to sit back and I had to ask myself why I was so annoyed. And I think one of the reasons why I was so annoyed was because this is obviously an area, like I think Megan is very self-aware. I think she's a very intelligent woman, but I think this is an area that she's really not self-aware. I think she knows what she's doing to her body is wrong, but I think she's trying to justify it. And I think that that's why it rubbed me the wrong way, because I felt like so much of the rest of the interview, I was feeling like such a genuine, like I understood what she was saying. I felt like it was a real, I felt a connection to her. I felt like I related to her. And then she started talking about the plastic surgery aspect. And I also noticed that's where her humor kicked in. Like I think Megan has a good sense of humor. I know a lot of people don't like her sense of humor. She kind of like makes fun of herself a lot. My humor was very self-deprecating when I did stand up. So like, again, I understand it. I could tell when she was talking about the plastic surgery, the way she was talking about it and the fact that her humor amped up. She obviously, I mean, the fact that Megan has body dysmorphia and uses humor as a defense mechanism, I'm like, I get her. But I did also notice, because I understand that as somebody who's had body dysmorphia her whole life, as someone who I made a career out of using humor as a defense mechanism, I saw her the section of the interview where she talked about plastic surgery. Like I could tell her humor was amping up because that was her defense mechanism. So like I could sense that that's what's going on. And I want to be very mindful of this. I know a lot of people thought that I was very hard on Kylie. And I do want to say everything I said about Kylie in the video talking about fake versus natural, I stand by what I said. I was not making it to make a hit piece on Kylie, but I feel like we need to call out this behavior. We need to call out this glorification of fake bodies and fake images and a fake look, because if we don't call it out, it's just gonna get worse. And I think it's actually really dangerous. And one of the things I mentioned in that video is I really do believe that these fake bodies are normalizing women basically being objects, being like human sex dolls. And it's basically paving the way to eliminate women and make like AI women be the desirable option. I really do believe that that's what's going on, so that men will just be more distracted by like AI corn with a capital P. And there's people who are going to justify it being like, oh, well, I mean, at least no actual human is being harmed in this, but this is also normalizing, first of all, fake women being the beauty ideal, and also the fact that we're fighting so hard to make something like porn more acceptable in society. And again, I want to do a whole video about how damaging it actually is. It's so damaging on so many levels. And part of the problem, and one of the issues I had with when I talked about Kylie in my other video, was people jump to, you're just jealous. And that's actually something that they touched on in the Call Her Daddy interview. Actually, Alex mentioned that, is like women that are critical of Megan getting plastic surgery or other celebrities getting plastic surgery are just jealous. That argument bothers me, because it's really a way of shaming somebody for speaking up about something that's important. I had a lot of people that were like, you're just jealous of Kylie, that's why you're criticizing her. I'm not jealous of Kylie Jenner. Now, would I love to have her billions? Yeah, of course I would. But like, I'm not jealous of her because I don't desire to look like a plastic doll. And before anyone comes for me, because I know I had a lot of criticism from people saying that I was like criticizing people that had like features that were exaggerated or whatever. I'm not. Look, I've had these since I was a kid, okay? I have a freakishly large chest, okay? Even when I starve myself to the thinnest I've ever been, still have a freakishly large chest. That's how nature intended me to be, okay? This is how I was born. There are women out there that have a naturally large, you know, butt and hips and things like that. There are women that have naturally full lips. Those things, they're beautiful. The fake version is not the same as the real version. My boobs do not look like people's fake boobs. Someone could get implants the same size as mine. They're not gonna look like mine do. BBLs don't look like women that have a naturally big butt. Fake lips. When people get fake lips, they don't look like a person that has naturally full lips. But when we put the fake as the beauty standard, it's dangerous because it never looks like it naturally does. Now, I will tell you, when it comes to the lips, I will tell you right now, I know people are gonna make the association with different races and different lip sizes. The lips that these young girls are getting, I would say Kylie and all these other young girls that you see, the OnlyFans, whatever, the reason why I say they look like sex toy blow-up dolls is because these lips are designed to emulate those lips. It's designed to look like every hole a woman has is the same. It's supposed to make a woman look like she's more ready to, you know what I'm getting at. I'm trying not to get demonetized here. They're trying to emulate, that's what I'm saying. Fake boobs have been around, I think, forever. They don't look like real boobs. And I say this again as somebody with gigantic boobs. But I will also say, because I have gigantic boobs, I also have bigger shoulders. I also have a larger rib cage. I have armpit fat. I have back fat. Like, even when I starve myself, even when I have literally been as thin as I could safely be for someone my height, I still have armpit fat. I still have back fat. Why? Because I have naturally large boobs. And I have a body shape that fits having naturally large boobs. If I had boobs this big and I had a tiny little rib cage and I had narrow shoulders, I couldn't carry myself up. I would literally, I mean, I already have like a permanent like hump in my back because I can't like actually, like, it's painful to sit up straight because these are so heavy. And it would be even worse if I didn't actually have the upper body to support this. That's what nature does. Like, nature knows that if they're gonna give you a body part that is naturally large, they give you the surrounding parts to your body that are naturally like that. Whereas you see a woman that is just like tiny, 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 like she's itty bitty girl, and then she gets these giant boobs on her. Of course, the skin is being pulled tighter, so she has like nothing under her armpits. She doesn't have back fat because obviously like everything's getting pulled to the front, whereas when they're natural, your body is you know, your body moves a certain way. Like, implants are never going to be natural. Now, do some women get smaller implants so they look more like natural? Yeah, which I think everyone in Hollywood has. Like, every single woman in Hollywood has that. No woman in Hollywood has natural boobs. Like, let's just be real about that. That is something that Megan touched upon, is the idea of, like, Hollywood. In Hollywood, you show up to a screen test and they basically tell you what you have to get fixed and what you have to do. That has been going on since the beginning of time. It's normal. It's not right. It's not acceptable. And any celebrity you're putting up on a pedestal, they've had work done. Every single one. Nowadays, I think they've had more work done than they used to, but every celebrity has had work done. That's just reality. But anyway, fake boobs don't look like real boobs. I can also tell you too, the number of women that I have known when they get boob jobs are so big on, like, showing them off, or like they'll be like, hey, feel them, like, feel my, you know what I mean? Like, oh, do they feel real? Do they not? Because those are not really a part of their body. Like, they are, like, it's your skin and everything like that, but like, I've witnessed it. Like, when women have fake boobs, they're more like objects. They're more like something that is like attached to them. They're not necessarily a part of them, if that makes any sense to you. Whereas, like, I would never go up to someone and be like, hey, feel my boobs, do they feel real? Because this is my body. Like, this is part of my body. Like, these actually are me. And oftentimes when women get these fake surgeries, the part of their body that is fake doesn't necessarily feel like them. It makes it easier for them to objectify themselves, which in turn, obviously, if you're even a little bit okay with objectifying yourself, the world is definitely going to be okay with objectifying you. The world will objectify you. It's your responsibility to own that you're not an object. Is it right that the world will easily objectify you? No, absolutely not. Is it a reality? Yes. As women, we have to learn to not objectify ourselves, because if we don't learn to not objectify ourselves, the world's not going to do it for us. Like, we have to own that we're not objects. And until we learn that we're not objects, the world isn't going to see us as anything other than an object. It's sad, but it's just, especially men, but society in general. Like, as women, we have to own that we're not objects first. When it comes to BBLs, you can tell the difference between a woman that naturally has fuller hips and a bigger butt, because she will also naturally have thicker thighs that support bigger hips and a bigger butt. Like, proportionally, she will look more pear-shaped or hourglass-shaped, depending on what her upper body looks like. It's not normal for a woman to have like a giant backside and like 2 little chicken legs, right? And also too, like, look, I'm not trying to brag here or anything, but I don't really have much cellulite. I mean, I have like a dimple or two, whatever, but I don't really have that much cellulite. I'm 44 years old. I'm in a bigger body size than people think is socially acceptable, but I don't really get cellulite. I have a little bit more now probably than I did when I was a little bit thinner, but like, generally speaking, I don't really get cellulite. I also don't really have much of a butt. I have very toned legs and I have a very tiny butt. No matter how much weight I gain, I don't even want to think about how much weight I would have to gain in order for somebody to see me as having a big butt. Like, I just don't gain weight in my butt. But women with much larger butts, larger hips, larger thighs tend to carry more cellulite, because they tend to carry more body fat in the lower parts of their body. I carry most of my body fat in my upper body. From like the waist up is where I carry most of my body fat. So I don't really carry a lot of fat in my lower body, and I don't really have much cellulite. A woman who carries a lot of body fat in her lower body is much more likely to have cellulite. Now, that's not to say that thinner women can have cellulite as well. Like, it's not necessarily a guarantee in that sense. But like, when you see some of these women with like these big butt injections and the BBLs and stuff, and they've got like this gigantic protruding butt and they've got no cellulite whatsoever, nature didn't do that. Like, nature didn't do that. Like, but it teaches people to think like, oh, well, this person has a giant butt and no cellulite, so that must be the beauty standard, when it's like, but that's not found in nature. That's not something that anybody finds in nature. That's not normal. Like, a woman with like huge breasts that doesn't have armpit fat, not found in nature. It's just, it's not, it doesn't exist, right? Women that have a naturally exaggerated body type or body feature in some way, like, nature has designed us to have a body that supports that feature. The fake version will never really look like the real version. This is why when I talk about women who get too many surgeries and I say they look cartoonish or they look like sex dolls or things like that, like, at the end of the day, it's the fake version. If a woman has like a a very large butt and large hips, or she has naturally large breasts like I do, or she has naturally full lips. Those are beautiful. Embrace those things. Embrace your body and the unique parts of you. If you are thin naturally and you don't have a lot of curves and you don't have a lot of shape, embrace that too. Own that. It's way easier for you to buy clothes. Like, embrace the things about you that are unique and stop trying to surgically alter your body to look like a certain image, because that image is not real. Now, one thing that Megan talked about was the disclosure. She was actually like talking about what surgery she's had and what surgery she hasn't had. I have a mixed feeling about disclosure, but first of all, she started off by saying that like Kylie has been very transparent about the surgeries she's had, which is actually very false. And I understand that Megan probably meant like now, because Kylie has been coming out and talking about it now. However, Kylie has not at all been open about disclosing the surgeries that she's had over the years. It's not Megan's responsibility to know that, but I just was kind of surprised that she threw that in. In Kylie's situation, it's actually even worse, I would say, than the average celebrity. I do think it's bad that when celebrities perpetuate this body image that is unattainable. It's worse when somebody is perpetuating a body image or a look or something, and they're trying to sell you something that people think is gonna get them that look that is not gonna get them that look. The fact that Kylie kept saying she was just overlining her lips and denied lip injections for a long time to sell her lip kits. Now, I will state that back when I used to do beauty blogging and I used to test liquid lipsticks and lip kits and lip liners and stuff like that, I will say Kylie Cosmetics lip kits, I haven't tried them in a while. I don't know what they're like now, or if they're even still around now, I'm not really sure. I think Kylie Jenner lip kits were some of the best liquid lipsticks out there. Had a ton of them. I wore them almost exclusively in a lot of my videos. I've tried to switch to more natural products now, so I don't really wear them as much, but they were a good quality product, but they were not gonna give you Kylie Jenner's lips, okay? It kind of bugs me even more that she was trying to sell a good product by deceiving you, when it's like you could have sold the product because it was a good quality product just by selling it as a good quality product. But she sold people that you could get her lips using the lip kits when you couldn't, because she was not just using those lip kits to get the lips that she had. She was using lip injections. So like that to me is on a whole other level of immorality, where we're actually talking about lying to people to sell them something. There was also an instance where now Kylie is talking about like admitting she had implants, and I believe people have said, I don't know if this is 100%, because I wasn't really following Kylie's career at that point, that Kylie was promoting like some kind of a push-up bra for Victoria's Secret, claiming that like that's what was giving her cleavage, when in fact she actually had implants, but she was denying that she had implants at that time. Again, false advertising. Like that's, you're getting into like trying to sell something to somebody under completely false pretenses. That's where it gets to be a problem. If she simply didn't want to tell people that she had implants, different story. But if she's actually trying to sell someone something and convincing them they can get the results with the product that she's trying to sell, when it was not the product that she was trying to sell that got her that result, it was something else, that's a, like, that to me is like, that's like actually deception. That should be considered fraudulent as far as I'm concerned. It's very similar, and I could probably do a whole video on the whole Ozempic thing, which I'm not gonna dive into in this video, but to me it's the same thing as like, I don't think Oprah would be obligated to give us her medical situation. If she wanted to use something like Ozempic or something because she felt like she needed to, that's her business. But if you are the owner and face of Weight Watchers, or W, or whatever they call themselves now, which is a diet company, and you start using something else to lose weight, you have to disclose that. That is the consumer's right to know, because you're selling somebody something and you're not being fully honest about how you got your results. That's fraudulent as far as I'm concerned. I was a little concerned when Megan mentioned Kylie and mentioned that she had been disclosing her surgeries, because she hadn't. I also, I know where Megan was coming from when she said this, but it really, it hit me, I think, the wrong way when she said, like, Kylie's a beautiful girl. I get where she was coming from. Like, she was coming from a place of kindness, and I understand that. I just really, really am concerned when we associate the word beautiful with somebody who is completely fake. I've said this before, I think I said this in my fake versus natural video, that like somebody labeled Bella Hadid as the most beautiful woman in the world. Nothing on Bella Hadid is real. Like, she's not a real, like, I mean, she's human, but like her physical appearance is completely fake. It's completely fabricated. And I get very concerned when we use the word beautiful to describe another person that is completely artificial, because again, it makes women who are artificial the beauty standard. I'm not saying that a woman that is thin like Bella Hadid or a woman who is curvy like Kylie shouldn't be considered beautiful. However, women who are fake because their bodies are fake and calling them beautiful is a very dangerous road we're going down. And it's getting worse. And as somebody who has witnessed this, like has witnessed this transformation, I came of age in the 90s, which was absolutely, like, I always used to tell people, like, I'm sending Kate Moss my therapy bills, you know, the heroin chic look and stuff like that, which, you know, was a whole trauma in itself. Like, I've witnessed this. I've seen the direction this is going in, and it's going in a really dangerous place. I also, when you start to tell women who call this behavior out as being jealous or insecure, when people will say, oh, Bella Hadid is the most beautiful woman in the world, that's not her. Like, that's not an achievement. It's not an achievement to be created as beautiful. It just means that you have money and the lack of fear of surgery to make yourself into that. It's not actually like an achievement. Like, you didn't earn that. You're not naturally beautiful that way. And I go into that in my whole, like, natural versus fake stuff. I get it. I color my hair, I wear makeup, and I go into that deeper in my natural versus fake video, so I'm not gonna dive into that now. I get very passionate about this topic. Actually, I'm gonna go on a tangent for a second. Somebody made a comment today about seeing this woman online who was, like, absolutely stunning, and she said she was a Miami 6, which I just wanna say, first of all, I hate the number system. I hate the number system. Like, I think it's so immature and disgusting when we actually call, like, human beings by numbers. I think that's gross. For the sake of this topic, we're looking at a woman who is absolutely stunning and was saying this person said she was a Miami 6, and so this person was like, well, what the hell's a Miami 10? And people in the comments were going on about, like, who is a Miami 10 and, like, who is a New York 10 and who is considered an LA 10 and whatever. None of the people they were listing have anything natural about their bodies. Like, they're all completely reconstructed and they're all fake. What is considered a 10 in our society is fake. And I actually talked about this, I think, in another video. I don't remember which video it was. Some guy who was like a nightclub owner or something that was talking about the criteria a woman needs to have in order to get into a Miami nightclub. And it was like, you better have your BBL done and you better have your weave and your extensions in or something. And I was like, so basically you have to have plastic surgery to get into a nightclub. I mean, I don't get what the reward is. Like, you get into a nightclub and, like, maybe you might meet someone who knows Drake. Like what's the reward there? You know what I mean? You just get to meet some superficial guy who, like, just wants to sleep with you for a night. Like, it's not, yeah, whole other tangent. But anyway, again, or like the people that were saying that Margot Robbie was mid. It's like, well, what is your version of attractive? I guarantee you, if you think that someone like Margot Robbie is mid, which, yes, Margot Robbie has had work done. I don't want to hear people say, like, oh, she's all natural. Everybody in Hollywood has had work done. Does she look more natural than a lot of other women who have kind of, like, overdone themselves? Yes, absolutely. She's had work done. Like, let's not pretend. And I know people are like, oh, well, compare her to when she was on Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah, she doesn't look like she's had a lot of work done since then. But if you look at, like, high school pictures of her, yeah, she's had work done. Like, everybody gets work done when they come into Hollywood. That's the deal. It's one of the prerequisites to get into Hollywood. You have to have something done. Like, it's the way it works. Is Margot Robbie, you know, attractive? Yeah, she's an attractive woman. The people that are saying she's mid, like, again, I would love to know who they think is attractive. And I would be willing to bet that they would put somebody like a Kylie Jenner as being the 10, because it becomes like the 10, so to speak, is just whoever has, like, mutilated their body, and I will get into that in a minute, like, mutilated their body to look a certain way. Anyway, so Megan starts talking about disclosing her surgeries, and she was talking about how she can't win because, like, people will criticize her for the surgeries that they make up that she's had, but then when she fully discloses her surgeries, they criticize her there. I have a mixed feeling about disclosures. I appreciate when celebrities do disclose the surgeries that they've had, because I do think that it also it helps people realize what's actually going on. Like, people realize that this look that the celebrities have is not something that you're just going to achieve without surgery. Like, I do think that it's a good thing that people are disclosing it. So I think it's a step in the right direction. But it did kind of feel like when Megan brought that up that she was saying that, like, well, me disclosing it should be good enough. It's still a problem. And again, this is where I thought it was interesting, and this is why I can tell that Megan really kind of knows that the surgeries and things that she's doing are actually wrong, because again, she was amping up her humor, and she also was talking about like internet trolls and people that were saying awful things to her, how then she would go to their page and they would be like a woman's life coach, or they would be like talking about divine feminine or things like that, which is interesting because those are all things that like Megan has talked about being into. I don't want people to start going and trolling people on the internet. I think if you go around and troll anybody on the internet or troll celebrities or something, you need better things to do with your life. Like, I'm not telling people to go be internet trolls at all. I know some people think I am for making videos about these celebrities, but at the end of the day, like, I'm not trying to take down these celebrities. I don't want to hurt their feelings. I feel for these people. I actually said to people who were telling me that I was too harsh on Kylie, I feel like Kylie's as much of a victim of this whole system as anybody. I feel for Megan, I really do. Like, I don't want to make this video to like hurt her or take her down, but I also know that if we don't call out this behavior and we don't actually talk about this stuff, it's only going to get worse. But I can tell that Megan got very defensive and critical, because things like the things that she was talking about with these women are also things that Megan has talked about connecting with as far as her spirituality and things like that. So I can tell she was getting defensive. Again, I'm sure it's because she gets a lot of hate and a lot of cruel people that are being excessively cruel towards her, because I think a lot of people don't humanize her, which must be heartbreaking. And my heart goes out to her for feeling this way and for having to experience that. And especially having to experience all the hate that she's dealt with over the years for, like she says, not really being a bad person, you know what I mean? But I can also tell, and especially the way she talks about these surgeries and how her body doesn't react well to surgeries, she acknowledges that they're dangerous, which I applaud her for, because I don't think that we talk about the dangers of some of these surgeries and how actually dangerous they are. And I do appreciate that she was very open about that. However, the fact that she's had these surgeries, the fact that she's acknowledging that she doesn't do well with surgery, that she is so anxious obviously about these surgeries, that she has such a long recovery time, that she doesn't do well with anesthesia, that she's got such a fear of this stuff, it's very obvious that what she's doing with these surgeries is another extension of her hurting herself. It's essentially like her plucking out all her eyebrows. It's essentially like the young girls who were cutting themselves as self-harm. I firmly believe that all of these surgical procedures that these young girls are going through, or these women are, these people are going through to desperately achieve this beauty standard, it's self-mutilation. It's these women are mutilating their bodies. It's no different than cutting. It's no different than just plucking out all your eyebrows. They're mutilating their bodies, and then society is calling it the beauty standard. As I was listening to Megan talk about these surgeries and how difficult she has it during these surgeries, and the anxiety that she feels going into the surgeries, and how, you know, she's had to have her breasts done, and she was like, I don't want to do this again, so make them as big as possible, and like all these kind of things. And like, you can tell like she's still not fully satisfied with the size of her implants now at this point. The fact that she wanted them so exaggerated, again, it's almost like she's treating them like an object on her own body, and she's struggling with people objectifying her, but then she's kind of trying to turn her body into an object as it is, like that conflict. Like, again, I don't want to shame her or hate on her, but this is a woman's mental illness. Like, it's body dysmorphia, which is a mental illness, and this is it manifesting. We can see what's happening. It's body mutilation, it's self-harm, and we're calling it the beauty standard. We're putting it up on a pedestal. And I'm not blaming Megan for this. It's society that's doing this. You know, we're doing this with Kylie and Kim and all these other celebrities that are basically mutilating their bodies. I mean, this is self-harm. Like, people who love themselves don't cut up their bodies and morph them into something else. They don't put implants in their bodies. They don't suck out certain areas of their bodies and then pump it in someplace else and stuff. Like, people who love and honor their bodies don't do that to their bodies. This is self-harm and it's body mutilation. We're then rewarding it by calling it the beauty standard and celebrating these women. And the message it sends other women in the world is that this is what you have to do to succeed. This is what you have to do to be considered beautiful, and you will be rewarded for it. You'll become a billionaire like Kylie. You'll become a billionaire like Kim. You'll become an international sex symbol like Megan. Because, you know, like Megan Fox, again, she's put up on a pedestal. She's seen as the woman that every man wants. Now, I understand that this is obviously not a role that she's that comfortable with. However, when you get women who have boyfriends or husbands who are idolizing Megan Fox, they get the message that, well, if I don't look like Megan Fox, then I'm not good enough. This played out on a smaller scale on the actual interview, and I encourage anybody, I can't really put clips of things in my YouTube because I just get attacked with like copyright stuff. But I encourage anybody to actually watch the Call Her Daddy interview, because there was a very distinct moment in this interview when Megan was talking about having a nose job, which I think, like, even if you look back at pictures of Megan like from high school before she had a nose job, she had a gorgeous nose. She is not needed to have work on her nose. I don't think she actually admitted to how many times she's actually had a nose job. I feel like at first she said she'd had one, and then I think she said she had not had as many as people had said she had, but I think she kind of going off on a tangent, so I don't know how many she's actually had, if she just had the one or if she's had more. But she realized as she was talking that her makeup artist had not contoured her nose, and she started freaking out, and she started having this like freak out moment of like, oh my god, I'm on camera and my nose isn't contoured. I mean, I do think some of it she might have been playing up a little bit for humor, but I think she actually was freaked out that she was on camera without her nose being contoured. Like, it did seem like there was some genuine anxiety that was coming up for her, and you could tell that Alex was kind of like just trying to get her back on track, and Alex is like, no, your nose looks amazing, like it doesn't need, like, it looks contoured to me, like it looks amazing. And Megan was like, no, you don't understand, like I'm on camera. And like, Megan was like freaking out. And because she's freaking out, at one point Alex was like, oh my god, now I'm thinking, like, what does my nose look like? Like, how bad does my nose look? Now, Alex is a beautiful woman, but if you notice just in that moment, because Megan was so obsessed with her nose contour and what her nose looked like, Alex, who has a perfectly beautiful face and a perfectly nice nose, started to feel like, oh my god, what's wrong with my nose? That's like in the moment where you see women that are so hell-bent on their insecurities and changing their look and their image, it rubs off to the women around them. And somebody like Megan, again, who, and it's not just Megan, but again, Kylie, Kim, all of these women in the media, these obsessions with constantly changing their look and their image, that rubs off on other women on a global scale. It becomes this obsession. Like, women that have really never thought about their nose before are gonna start thinking that they need a nose job. I've said this in other videos before, but like the filters online, like I used to think when filters like on Instagram first started, and I was like, oh, these are fun, like these are cute. I liked playing with the lighting or add sparkles to things or whatever, but I started realizing that a lot of these face filters, they would shrink my nose. And like, I've never been self-conscious about my nose before. Like, I've never even really, like, I think my nose is proportional to my face. Like, I've never been insecure about my nose, like, ever. But you start seeing these filters that, like, you're like, oh, let me put on a filter, and it's all of a sudden my nose is like all like pushed in, and you start to be like, why do they keep changing my nose? Like, this is weird. And granted, at my age, I'm fine with my nose. Like, I don't have an issue with my nose. But like, if these filters were around when I was like coming of age in my teens and my 20s, I think it could have very easily influenced me into thinking that I needed a nose job, because I was so insecure back then, like, as many women are. And seeing it in real time in this interview of like Megan's insecurities being so deep and so obsessive that it actually ended up making another very beautiful woman feel insecure about her own nose. That's just one small instance of something that is happening on a global scale. And I don't want to put the blame on Megan, because it's not her responsibility to not make other women insecure about themselves. But it goes to show that like that deep-rooted insecurity, and putting somebody with that deep-rooted insecurity in their body image in this position of being a beauty standard is very dangerous. You know, it's a very dangerous thing for us to do overall. And again, I'm not putting this blame on Megan, because I think the root of this goes much deeper and much bigger than Megan. I'm actually heartbroken that somebody with this level of insecurities and this level of body image issues is being put in this position that's negatively influencing a lot of other people. And I think it's actually really hurting her. Like, Megan talked about how she kind of disappeared from the limelight for a while, which is another reason why I don't think she's faking the body dysmorphia thing, because she has walked away from the spotlight for a while. And I think if she was just doing this for a constant need for attention, she wouldn't have been able to do that. And I think she's talking about possibly kind of like going away again. I think it's sad that she feels like she needs to, but honestly, after seeing this interview, really do think that like this is a woman who's dealing with a lot and like probably should take a step back from the public eye and actually like work on herself. And I really hope she does, because that was one of the biggest takeaways from this interview. And again, there was a lot of really great stuff she talked about in this interview that I really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed watching the interview. And it was also heartbreaking for me to see someone with such severe body dysmorphia that actually, like, you're witnessing what it can actually do to someone, especially someone who naturally was beautiful. And I think it goes to show that like you can be as gorgeous as Megan Fox was. And again, if you look at high school photos of her from before she was famous, she was a stunningly beautiful girl. But it goes to show that body image, body dysmorphia, and the pressures in society to fit a standard, like, they affect all of us. I just want to touch on briefly, because I know I do talk a lot about like relationship dynamics and stuff. Megan and Brian Austin Green. Now, Megan was with Brian Austin Green for many years. They dated for a while. They started dating when she was very young, and he was older. He was already a father at that point. I'm not crazy about age gap relationships or anything like that. I do think that it was very healthy the way that Megan talked about her relationship with Brian Austin Green. Again, she was very much like, you know, she made some mistakes, he made some mistakes. She really believes that she was meant to have her kids with him. And to be totally honest, I do feel like they kept a lot of their relationship a bit like away from the spotlight. So I don't really have a lot to go on as far as analyzing their relationship. I will say though that my image of him, it's not necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily great. Like, I remember him from 90210. He was David Silva, you know, Donna Martin Graduates. Like, you know, I remember that. He's a handsome guy that got some success young. I don't really know that he's done that much over the years, but he seems like he kind of seems like a bro. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, it's just my interpretation. Again, I don't really know him, but he seems like he's just sort of like an attractive LA guy. You know what I mean? I kind of understand why Megan would, she called their relationship ultimately unfulfilling, but she also said like no shade to Brian. Like, she wasn't really trying to like throw him under the bus or anything, which, you know, I respect that she was, you know, he's the father for kids and everything. But I wouldn't be surprised at all. Again, this is my interpretation of this, but the fact that Megan was so young when they got together, I think she was like 18, but she was new in Hollywood, she was being very sexualized. I wouldn't at all be surprised, especially with like, especially everything that's coming out about like child stars in Hollywood and everything that's going on, and more people are talking about, you know, with the Me Too movement, the casting couch, and blah blah blah. I wouldn't at all be surprised if Megan didn't feel a certain amount of safety in being in a relationship with someone, and especially with him being older and having been in the industry for longer. I wouldn't be at all surprised if she wasn't probably feeling very vulnerable and wanted somebody, like, she's talked about issues with her stepfather and her father, and she didn't really talk about that a lot in the interview, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Brian wasn't kind of like a maybe surrogate father figure or something, or somebody that kind of kept her from being just like single in the industry. Again, it's just my read of things, but again, he does come across as somebody who's just, you know, sort of like an attractive LA guy, not necessarily somebody who's like too deep or complicated. And it does seem like Megan really wanted to be deeper and more intense, and she wanted to be more, have more depth to her life and stuff, which I'll get into in a minute. One thing I will say about Brian Austin Green that I think, again, I don't know much about him, but I do know now he is with Sharna Burgess. They just had a baby together. I've watched her on Dancing with the Stars. Love Sharna. But I've noticed that Sharna is getting a ridiculous amount of work done. Now, her on Dancing with the Stars, gorgeous, talented, amazing woman. And the fact that like Megan has had so much work done, and then now Sharna has had so much work done. I feel like, and again, we're talking about LA and stuff, so it's normal for people to kind of get obsessed with getting a lot of work done. But I am a little bit like, either Brian Austin Green seems to have a thing for women who have a lot of deep insecurities and feel like they need to get a lot of work done, or he's actually making these women more insecure and making them feel like they need to get work done. Again, I don't want to accuse him of anything, but I have been thinking about that, because I'm like, the fact that Sharna has now been getting so much work done and like almost doesn't even look like herself anymore, when she was a beautiful woman before, I'm thinking like, either this is like the kind of woman that Brian is attracted to, or maybe he's bringing it out in them. I don't know. And again, I don't want to make any accusations because I don't know him. I'm noticing that seems to be a little bit of a pattern, but just throwing that out there. Megan and MGK, which, to be totally honest with you, I don't know that much about Machine Gun Kelly. I don't really know much about him or his music. I mean, I really only know him from like dating her. He seems like somebody, I did actually hear a song of his that came out not too long ago because I was seeing some people reviewing it on YouTube, and it seemed pretty heavy and pretty intense. And I think Megan's attraction to him is because she wants to be deeper, more complex and intense. Like, she's craving that. And very often when women are craving something within themselves but they don't necessarily feel very confident in it, they will often seek that in a partner. Somebody actually told me this story years ago of this woman that she knew who desperately wanted to be a doctor. Like, she always wanted to be a doctor her whole life, but she really didn't feel like she was smart enough to get into medical school, and so she kind of like didn't really pursue that career. So she ended up marrying a man who was a doctor, because it was like she kind of lived vicariously through him. But then it ultimately didn't work because she wasn't selecting this guy because this was actually the person she wanted to be with. She was kind of like trying to desperately live vicariously through him because this was what she really wanted to be pursuing. And I think that can happen oftentimes. And I think this can go either way in relationships, but I think oftentimes with women, we sell ourselves short. Either the world tells us we're not smart enough, funny enough, interesting enough, talented enough to be something. So we oftentimes just say, well, I'll just be the pretty face, or I'll just look good, or I'll be what society tells me I should be, sexy, pretty, whatever. And we date someone who is those things that we hope to embody within ourselves. And that oftentimes doesn't work because we then end up envious of that person because that's really who we want to be, or the parts of ourselves that we want to explore. And we're not choosing that partner necessarily because they're compatible with us. We're just choosing that person because we want those things within ourselves. And I'm not necessarily saying that Megan's doing that, but I also do feel like Megan wants to be complex, creative, intense, complicated, because I think she's been seen as this just sort of sex object for so long that she wants to cultivate those things within herself. So she's drawn to somebody who is sort of universally seen as all of those things to kind of try to connect with that in herself. Now, whether or not that relationship is going to work long term, like she said, she wants to keep their relationship status and things private, which I respect, and that's fine. But I do think it's important for women to be aware that if you are blocked off from a part of yourself, or don't feel like it's acceptable for you to find a part of yourself, or like the world is rejecting a part of yourself, if you try to find that part of yourself like in a partner, it's not necessarily the healthiest thing, because you're not really choosing a partner based on your own compatibility. You're choosing a partner that you're hoping will complete a part of yourself that you're not comfortable tapping into. And I just think it's fair to look at that. There's actually a really iconic line I remember from Tina Fey, because it's very common for like women who want to be in stand-up comedy to sleep with male comics to try to like legitimize them or something. Not a route that I chose to take, but there are a lot of women who do that. And Tina Fey has a line that she's like, comedy is not sexually transmittable. And I love that line because it kind of shows that as a woman, if you meet a guy that embodies something that like you wish you embodied in yourself, sleeping with him is not going to bring that out in you. But as women, sometimes I think we forget that. We're just sort of like, okay, I want an aspect of this man to be a part of me, to be a part of what I embody. So we think, well, if we sleep with this man, then that'll be kind of like a part of us. And that's not usually how it works. It's not sexually transmittable. Depth, creativity. I mean, creativity is sexual energy, but like sleeping with somebody to get more creative is probably not going to work. That's not to say though that if you do want to bring those things out in yourself, like if you do want to be a more creative person, if you do want to be more intellectual, if you do want to embrace your humor, like if you do want to embrace certain things about yourself, and you're with a partner who does embody those things and they're willing to support you in finding those things within yourself, like that can be a good thing. That can absolutely be a great thing. But I don't want people to get too caught up, particularly women, too caught up in thinking that just being with a man who embodies certain things that you wish you could tap into in yourself is going to be fulfilling. Like, you're still going to need to tap into those things within yourself in order to feel fulfilled. It does feel to me like Megan is trying to find certain aspects of herself, and she's seeing them in someone like MGK. Now, she did come out with her poetry book. I have not read it. I'm actually considering reading it. If any of you guys have actually read Megan's book, let me know. I'd love to hear what you think of it. I might read it and maybe make a review. I don't know. I'll think about that. I think it's great. I think it was risky. I know she has gotten some criticism for it because I think people are kind of like, oh, Megan Fox writes poetry. More power to her. I think if she wants to express herself in a way that is not, you know, just her being sexy in a movie, like, or her being, you know, sexy in a photo or something, and she wants to send, you know, something else out into the world, like, more power to her. I'm all for that. And, you know, maybe being in a relationship with someone who's a musician, who's more of a creative, maybe that inspired her, and, you know, good for her. Like, I applaud her for that. I really do. I think that's great. I might consider reading it. I actually have been dabbling in poetry. If any of you don't know, it's been a big part of my healing process, and I've started sharing more of it online. I've been sharing some of it in videos here on YouTube. I actually created a poetry section on my everydaystarlet.com website if you want to check that out. I also have a Pinterest board for poetry now, so like if you guys want to check those things out, I have a playlist on YouTube if you want to check out just me like reading some of my poems and things like that. So if you want to check that out. I don't want to make this video to make fun of Megan. I feel like my heart goes out to her. It hurts me to think about the way that I think the industry and the world and society has kind of, I mean, granted, she's had a lot of success. She's had a lot of mainstream success. She's made a lot of money, doing better than I am in a lot of ways. But it does hurt me to see what society has really done to somebody who very obviously has some mental illness. And I think maybe I'm harder on somebody like Kylie or Kim because they're not necessarily as vocal about these things as Megan. They may be going through the same kind of body dysmorphia issues that Megan is. If they are and they're just not as vocal about it, then my heart goes out to them too. It does either way, to be honest with you, because I really don't believe that these women that are getting all these surgeries and all these procedures, it's not coming from a place of self-love by any means. It's coming from self-hatred. It's coming from pressures in society. And I think it's part of a bigger ploy, as I talked about in the other video, Fake versus Natural. I think it's part of a bigger ploy to start making real women, like real natural women and real natural looks be kind of obsolete and just make way for just AI women and things like that. I think it's part of a much bigger plot. And there's probably some guys out there who are going to be like, well, who cares? I don't care. Naturally, I'd rather just have a woman this AI and blah, 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 and whatever. Well, if they can do that to women, they can do that to men. So even if you are a man out there who doesn't care about women, I hope if you're a man watching this video, you're a man who cares about women. But if you are a man who's watching this video because you hate women and you want to leave a hate comment or something, just so you know, if they can do it to women, they can do it to men. So I've seen it with like body dysmorphia is actually increasing a lot in men, body image issues, and the way that they are, you know, getting men to hate their bodies, and they're manipulating men that way. They've been doing that to women for years, and they're doing it to men now because they figured out how to do it to women and they perfected it, and so now they're gonna do it to men. So, you know, nobody's safe, is what I'm saying. So, and if we keep dismissing people that speak up about this and just say, oh, you're just jealous or you're just this, whatever, it's only gonna get worse. I know I went off on a lot of tangents in this video, but like Megan's interview really inspired me. I actually thought it was a really good interview. I thought Alex did a really great job doing the interview. I highly recommend you watch it. There was a lot of other topics in there that I think were really interesting. I just really wanted to focus on like the body image stuff because I just think it's really important. It was really vital, and like watching this interview really just inspired me to talk about a lot of things. Most of it I've already talked about in videos, but I just think it's such an important message that I want to get out there. I want women to learn to love and embrace their natural beauty. And again, I realize I color my hair, I wear makeup and stuff, but this stuff is all temporary. I mean, I could change it tomorrow if I wanted to. You know, again, would life be better if people didn't have to color their hair and people didn't need makeup? Yeah, maybe. But like at the end of the day, it's different than actually like surgically altering your body. Like the levels of danger and the levels of complications and the levels of just like where we're headed with that is so dangerous. So I really want people to wake up to that. Again, talking about Megan and her creativity, if you want to connect to your creativity, I have a new course, The Art of Feminine Creativity, if you want to sign up for that. If you want to connect to your dark feminine energy, which is really what taps you into rebelling against society, I have the Dark Feminine Energy Guided Journal available on Amazon. Links to that and all my other masterclasses are in the description box below, along with links to all my other social media accounts. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure you subscribe to my channel. Any thoughts on this video, any video suggestions, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you and I love your suggestions. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.